Welcome to On the Edge, a show examining how deals actually happen in commercial real estate. Host Malcolm Davies, founder of Way Capital, speaks with professionals in development, investment, finance, and more for insights into how these business leaders get deals capitalized. Malcolm's career spans more than 20 years, during which time he has managed nearly $20 billion worth of financings. Now to your host, Malcolm.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next edition of On the Edge from Way Capital. Today, we have my great friend, Kamau Coleman with Offset Capital. Kamau, welcome.
Hi, everybody.
On the Edge.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here, Malcolm.
So we were talking about matching energy. I feel like you and I are kindred spirits with energy because I think we just kind of send it out and it's infectious. So let's get after it today. I feel like we're going to have a great session. So look, we've known each other for a very long time. I would love to get, before we even get into Offset, how you actually got into commercial real estate and commercial real estate finance early on in your career.
Yeah. So early on, I was an engineer, and I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't going to make any money as an engineer working for Hughes Aircraft. At some point, I decided to go back to business school. And in business school, I focused on entrepreneurship, finance, and real estate. And so got out of school in 2003, spent a little bit of time in private equity, and lucky me, right around 2007 was when I decided to go headlong into real estate full time. And then we had the great meltdown. Mm-hmm. So at that point, my back was against the wall. There was nowhere to go. I had to find a way to slog it through since I'd already started making that transition.
Tough times, right? We all know what the GFC was like for we like to say we're very young, but we're getting on the older side, Kamau. We're not the youngest guys in the room, although we probably can hang with all the youngest guys in the room. Yeah. I would say this, it was a great experience, but a horrible one at the same time. But it taught us all about the things that are going on in today's market. What were the dynamics that you felt like in that era that kind of taught you to have the fortitude to get through it and then be on the other side of it? Because it certainly was a challenging time.
Yeah. What's interesting was at that time, I didn't have the benefit of a couple of cycles, but I remember having had conversation with the older guys. As a matter of fact, a group of guys were able to put together some equity, and we came in as kind of white knights, bailing out some of the guys who had done earlier cycles. And I remember them talking about what you and I were chatting about recently, which is you always have to go back to the fundamentals. Where's your basis? What is the bottom line? And they had the benefit at that time of having been through a couple of cycles. And so they could say to us in a way that we could hear. We didn't fully believe them, but look, we're at the bottom. You guys are coming in at the right time. We're the ones who are taking the real pain on this. There's upside for you to see. So I think it's kind of the benefit of a couple of cycles and maybe really listening to guys who've been through the war scars more than you have.
So you've primarily been on the debt side of the business, as well as I know some equity elements that you partake in, but kind of how do you frame your thought process around a lot of people feel like they want to be in the part of the business that they understand or are the most comfortable with. How have you chosen the debt side of the business more than, investing just on the equity side?
I've always invested in both, but the debt side, I found that it was more controllable and maybe the cycles were longer. I mean, the last 5 years have been tough on the debt side in a lot of ways, but I think that cycle was probably longer than on the equity side. Sure. For whatever reason, I think trying to guess asset classes and shorter cycles. So for whatever reason, it was more natural fit maybe to my personality, maybe a little bit more conservative. Yeah.
First of all, where did you go to college? Give me the education background, because I think
so Cal Poly Pomona for engineering school, and then I went to UCLA for business school.
And do you think that
remind me again, where'd you go to school? Undergrad?
I went to Arizona. I mean, I went to the Harvard of the West, as we like to call it.
Exactly.
I call it the hustle university because every one of my friends that's successful is very good at the hustle, working their tails off and succeeding and being accountable and reliable. I think it really isn't rocket science, I don't think, to succeed in today's day and age in commercial real estate. There are some things that are really important: be accountable and be trustworthy and have real strength in relationships, right? I think those are keys to this business.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I always think about how do you get to where you're at today? So at Offset, which I know is an amazing platform that you've built, but tell me about how you got to starting Offset Capital and really to get to this point, to be that entrepreneurial guy who's growing a platform like yours.
Yeah. Well, listen, the last cycle had its challenges and partnerships are tough. And so there were some areas of my professional life that were breaking down, but it was also opening other sides. And to your point about how important relationships are, what I knew I had was both in terms of who we primarily market to, which is brokers, right? Our primary stakeholders and deal flow comes from brokers. One is I knew that I had great relationships with brokers that were formed over years of trust of doing what we said we were going to do. So I knew I had a shot there. Secondly, I knew I had some good relationships with capital partners. Our previous firm mostly raised money from high net worth individuals and through RIAs. And so there wasn't a need to raise a fund. We weren't going to raise a fund in the same way, but I knew that there were capital relationships that also trusted us. And so we were able to pretty quickly come out of the gate with trusted capital that I could rely on, and then guys who would at least give us a shot if I told them I could get a deal done.
And generally speaking, when people are competing for deals and the brokerage community, what are the ways that you're winning? What do you think are the ways besides your charisma and your good looks and the like? How do you get these deals done?
You know what? I think that deals a lot of times it's stamina, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really understanding the other side. It's taking time to understand where they're coming from, understanding what their push points are, and sometimes it's just being willing to grind through and be more creative and more responsive than the next guy. So I think the base economics. There's a lot of capital providers out there. If guys really want deals, they can shave where they want to. As we all know,
Sure.
there's always negotiation in it. But I think part of it is where's the intent? And I still love this about this business with all the kind of technological advances, et cetera. There's still an element where you have to be able to look a guy in the eye.
Yep.
And we always look a guy in the eye. And we've done enough work to understand where are you weak, where are you strong, where do we think that we have a rapport. And now I need to look you in the eye and say, are you a guy who's going to pay me that money back? Are you going to do what it takes?
It's all about trust. I think
Yeah.
at the end of the day, right? The reality is, do you trust them to be, a good borrower? Do they trust you to be a great lender, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is you without the personal relationship, you don't know. You have to gut check it.
Yeah, 100% that's the case. They don't know us. And it's interesting. After having built a platform from, $3 million to over $1 billion,
Yeah.
deal by deal, I was used to selling our platform 10 years ago. There was a point then where I didn't have to sell our platform. Everybody knew exactly what we did.
Yep.
And they would come to it. And if I gave my word, we were good. Starting a new firm, there's always still, yes, they trust you, but they still want to see you get some stuff done. And so I've had to go back to selling and really thinking about what is it that we're competing on.
Sure. And it's a competitive business, as we know. It's not easy to get every transaction, and there's a lot going on. How do you see the world today? I think, it's been probably one of the choppier markets we've been involved in. And the GFC was a very, quote unquote, like very aggressive, very violent. It dropped like a rock. It was a sharp knife. And then, we had relatively, a recovery. This one's been, up and down, up and left and right, winners and losers. How do you work within that environment in today's day and age?
Honestly, so this goes back, Malcolm, I think, to partially resilience and also partially being at the place in our careers where we are. It's not so easy anymore to just say tuck tail and run or go a completely different direction. I mean, you certainly can, but I have, a lifetime worth of relationships sort of in this business. And to some degree, I'm an optimist. If you're not an optimist, you couldn't be an entrepreneur, right?
Yep.
And so from that standpoint, I keep on seeing, we're almost there. We're just kind of getting there. And I keep on constantly then going back and then working the relationships that seem to me like they have the best foothold in this market. It really has been tough to figure it out.
So what geographies are you looking at in today's day and age in the platform? So, it's one thing about asset classes, but it's also, is it I like to call it the tax efficient states versus the tax inefficient states, to not be political. But, the reality is, where do you see the opportunities for offset in financing today?
Yeah, we have seen some in the Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
We've put some money out in Denver, a bit across the Midwest. We continue to see deals in New York and across the Southeast as well. We really would like to do more in my home state, California, but it's challenging. I mean, there is a good amount of money that's chasing deals here, and then there's some reluctance, I think, to transact as well. So California has been a tough market, although I'd like to do more here.
Yep.
Chicago is challenging, and is sort of the third rail for us. Other markets are pretty lukewarm. So I mean, there's only a few bright lights, I think, that are really out there. But at the same time, we're also really willing to dig through and try and figure out if there's a way to make a deal work.
Are you winning by stretching a little farther into the capital stack? Are you winning because you are building that trust and that rapport? Are you winning because your covenants are a little bit easier to deal with? Like, what are the reasons why someone would want to select Offset versus another competing lender, for example?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the flexibility, the perseverance to keep on going down every little capillary that's possible to get a deal done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes the stamina, you outlast other groups, or maybe that they just lose interest or focus on it. So there's that piece of it, and then the other part of it, I think, is real creativity. I mean, we are almost every deal that comes through the door, that's somebody that we already know and respect. And so we already have a rapport and want to find a way to do a deal. So there's a little bit more trust.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, again, going back to that, you got to look a person in the eye. There's a moment where I have to say, okay, we can deliver this. Or they have to say to me, if I give you that, will you be able to close it? So I think I wouldn't say there's a direct path. I think there's a lot of it is about communication and trust that's built.
Yeah. All right. So going forward, because we're all about like looking in the past, dealing with the present. We talked about this a little bit before, but the next few years could be pretty interesting. And I think, where you're positioned to take advantage of that. How do you see the next few years in our markets? Will you do more business in California? Will the money come back? I mean, it's amazing. We're both in California, and we both are doing a lot less in California than we have ever done before, just simply for just various reasons. The market's been challenging, but there's also been some things that have been decided on that have been affecting things, like ULA in Los Angeles, for example, which was, transfer tax. But, the next few years should be fun. So how do you peg those in the next few years, and how do you play that for Offset's benefit?
Yeah, I think so. Part of it is going to be sort of where we're going to let the market take us a little bit based on, where things are going. I mean, our business to some degree is a little bit reactionary. And so you have to evaluate deals in real time. But I think where we're going to try and push is more into development. So here's kind of my agenda for next year.
Yeah.
We're probably looking at raising some new capital, and we're definitely interested in doing deals that are a little more value add, possibly all the way to construction, right? So I think we have a good kind of deal flow, and we have a good trajectory in sort of senior bridge, that product. But I think there's a big need for construction capital, and that's an area that we've lent before, and we're looking for capital partners to do that. So that's kind of the trajectory for 26.
As a former developer, that's music to my ears. So. Yeah. So,
is there any future development ever again in your life?
No. I think I learned, in life, humility is a really important component. I would say as you get older, you start realizing, what are you the best at? And I think, I'm really good at raising money. And so I'm better at raising money than I am at executing the business plan, like some of our clients are excellent at doing. And so I like to stay in the lane that I'm in. And I always thought, though, after the GFC, I would come back and be a developer again. But, just really excel at this side and let the folks that are better at it do it. The key is to know your lane and stay there. We know your talents, and don't do it all. That's probably my best advice. And then have some humility around the fact that it doesn't always go well. And, you have to have perseverance in this business. No question about that. And it is a business that is it's a long game. There's no way this business is the short game. If you want to be the short game, start being an AI company, right? Which is what we're all using now in our businesses. But the reality is that's not really at the end of the day our businesses. It's this, it's the ability that we can see eye to eye, we can talk. And, when you're working with me and I'm bringing a client to you, it's like, hey, if I'm willing to work with them and I'm able to vouch for them, my fiduciary is high, but it's not as high as yours, right? You are making that loan or that investment. But at the end of the day, I don't want to bring you anybody that I wouldn't want to do business with myself personally, right? So I think in general, we are all vouching for each other. And that's the
I'm gonna dig one more level deeper on you, Malcolm Davies. So what about it? How does that or has that changed over time? So back in the day when you were, a young, hungry whippersnapper, would you bring anybody through the door? Has that changed today just because you have more choice, or is it integrity, or what's changed?
I mean, I think we all like to work with folks that we get along with really well. And, those are the individuals that regard the work that anyone does. I mean, it's not rocket science. The reality is you want to work with the people you get along with the best that regard you.
Yeah.
It's the same thing for you. Like when you have repeat borrowers, you want to be able to have that repeat borrower be able to, because they're a quantity, right? When you underwrite sponsor, market, real estate. Well, reality is if you've already passed the underwriting of the sponsor, you like their decision making, you think of them highly. Now all that's really left is to really make sure that market and real estate kind of work. Where it gets a little challenging and why we exist, I think, as an advisor company to bring deals to you is, at the end of the day, we have to vouch for that individual sponsor. And if you don't know them, and it's not easy because there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of deals out there, but not all of them are great, as we know. And a really great deal can be messed up by a sponsor with poor decision making. I think we know that, right?
And listen, there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. For us, we certainly value knowing that there's some rigor behind the deal that we're getting.
Yep.
Right? I mean, we're respectful of anyone that brings us an opportunity, and we respond that way. But there's no question that you're going to give preferential treatment to folks that are giving you good quality. And more importantly, right, from a credit and underwriting standpoint, it's that you're getting good quality information, and they'll tell you where the red flags are. You want to evaluate that stuff up front. So we really do appreciate every opportunity, but we really appreciate the relationships that have proven themselves over time.
There's a little quote I always say. It's not just who you know, it's how you know how to get them to do it. And, that's why you'll see us really being transparent with the market about who we talk to and who we communicate with, because at the end of the day, there's an art form of being able to raise capital, and it's all about momentum and then building bonds and trust. And, it's the power of human connection. I'm a firm believer. That's why, I have this on the edge with you, and why we're creating these connections so that folks know who the capital is that are doing deals and how they're thinking about actually making a decision on something. And I think every deal requires something different. You got to be creative in today's day and age. Unless you're just a traditional permanent lender, you got to have something else that you can work towards to be able to help that person or that company grow. If you can't help them grow, you're just a transaction, and you're a commodity at that point. Okay, so we'll switch a little bit of the topics, generally speaking. So you and I have had this conversation in the past. It's about diversity, right? The reality is there's a lot more folks that look like me walking around in our industry, and we're trying to diversify ourselves.
When you say look like you, are you talking about 6'7"?
No, that's true. I am quite odd in that I'm probably the largest. I'm like a linebacker walking through the lobbies. No, but I think it's just something that is true. I was raised by a mother who worked at NASA in the 1960s. There weren't a lot of women in NASA in the 1960s, and I always ask her how she got in there and how she got, and it's like really interesting, because in life it's about how do you add more people to the industries that we're involved in, and in our industry in finance, it seems like there's a lot less of folks that are not quote unquote Caucasian, I guess. I'll just say it, right? And how do we add more? And should we start with like better systems and better opportunities when we're talking in high school about the pathway for being involved in certain types of places like this? Or just give me your thoughts,
It's a tough question. It's a question I talk about with my contemporaries quite a bit. And I think in general, this country, we need a lot better kind of financial education. I do think that the younger generation is much more engaged in this than certainly than I was when I was in high school and college.
Yeah.
So there's some of that that's bleeding over. I think that also, just in general, forget race, color, creed, gender, all that stuff. I think that is bleeding out there. So I think that is a seed that I'm very hopeful about. Beyond that, I think it's about having examples that you can see. I could not, when Barack Obama became president, I mean, I was one of the early guys who was out there campaigning, but I couldn't actually see it. I was compelled to go do it, but I couldn't see it. Today, my kids go, hey, it absolutely could be me. So I think examples of it are important. I think that examples that are capable and respected, and that also then will help to open other doors are super important. So I'm very hopeful for the future. I think that there are a lot of programs that are out there that will open doors, and then the other side of it is people have to be willing to work their asses off.
I mean, that's the key to all businesses, right? This one is that there's a hustle in our industry that is really incredibly important. The most successful, I believe, in our business aren't necessarily always you got to be really smart. Don't get me wrong, but it's not just that. It's the ability that you're going to take that extra mile. It's that extra conference, the extra airplane flight you're going to go on. It's the how do you create that interpersonal connection, right? In the past, I've brought in clients directly to you so that you could know them even before you would issue a proposal. And you would be willing to do that. I think that is, to me, the extra mile that you take as you kind of look at your success, because I think that dynamic is really critical, more so in our industry than others. It goes back to AI is coming and we are building efficiencies. But one thing that's not going to change is folks like you and I to see an eye to eye and then bring in other people, because that's going to be the key.
Listen, it's about, there's some great examples, and you're a cigar guy and I'm a cigar guy. Grand Havana Room is a great example of where people from all kind of walk, not every walk of life, right? But there's a good long community legacy of people breaking bread together and sharing ideas, and then being willing to do deals that you never would have done. So that's a piece of it that I do think is super important, right? So in spaces where you can invite lots of different people from different walks of life and different upbringings in a place of respect, I think that makes a huge difference. Breaking bread with people and getting to know them on a personal level is really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost the key to the whole business. So if you were to give advice as to a younger person going through education and graduating from college, what would you recommend for them if they wanted to get into kind of being your side of the business? What are the things that you would recommend to them in today's day and age to kind of follow in Kamau's footsteps?
To me, it feels like it would be sort of not that difficult, but I hear from my friends who have kids who are of the age where they're trying to get jobs that it's really difficult to get them.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me, though, that if you're somebody who is pretty aggressive, put your foot forward, it seems like people will give you a chance. And I personally think that a lot of times kids are a little bit too laissez-faire today, and don't put. But again, at the same time, I hear from friends that maybe that's not the case. So to me, I feel like having some confidence and being willing to really put yourself out there is a key.
Well, it's like the last generation of cell phone raised folks. The reality is that they'll tell us, and I know this, they're just smarter and more efficient with their time. And we still go back to what it was like, in the 1990s, for God's sakes, before we had all this fun.
And then at the same time, they're all still looking for the perfect job, right? And sitting at home.
There is no perfect job. I would say that. I would say there's a perfect career.
Exactly.
And I think nothing, the expression always, nothing is done in vain ever. meaning that even if it's something you're working on that's just painful and you don't want to do it, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. That okay, I don't want to do that, right? And you'll stop going down that path. For me, it was like losing everything in the GFC. Oh, I don't really want to go down that path again. I have a lot of respect for folks that are successful in that regard. It's So I'll lead the end with this, with Offset. You guys, from a presence perspective, I know you're here in LA with me. You do have an office, I think, in New York, correct? Walk me through where you guys are at, and generally speaking, how do you look at the country? Like, do they all come to you, Kamau? Do you have partners? How does it work at Offset?
Yeah, so there are three partners: myself, Renee Valeric, and Adam Frank. Adam has an office. Actually, our corporate office is in Boston, not too far from where he lives. And then Renee is in New York, and so she hotels there basically. And I'm here in Los Angeles, and so there definitely is some amount of geographical splitting, but I think that's just from our natural networks.
Yeah.
For the most part, you send a deal into info@Offset Cap. It's coming to all three of us. If you know any one of us, there's always overlap, et cetera. But I would say there's just a general kind of, we've built networks over a lifetime. And so that's kind of, I'm more West Coast. They're both more
Sure.
East Coast, but there's a lot of overlap. And then internally, I would say, between myself and Adam, we're, screening, underwriting. Renee is a little bit more externally focused, but for the most part, we all today do everything.
I love it. So, hey, look, Kamau, you and I are going to continue doing lots of deals together. I can't thank you enough for joining us today on the Edge. I almost said Offset. Look at that. You've almost taken over the,
Yep, I've commandeered your show.
How deals get done. How deals get done is through Offset. Yep. So thanks so much, my friend. And
thank you, Malcolm.
We will continue the dialogue and look forward to seeing this get posted live. You're the best, Kamau.
I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Thanks for taking the time to tune into our latest show. As always, you can find us through our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@wayontheedge or at our website at www.waycapital.com. Until next time, keep working on the edge.